Welcome back to Unleash the Goats, where we unleash ourselves upon the Star Wars franchise with reckless abandon, and nobody quite knows what we'll say next, least of all us. I'm Nat, she, her. Angela, say hi.
Hi, I'm Angela /Faye, she, her.
This is what happens when I hide you guys, so I'm not looking while I say it, is that then I call out people when they're drinking.
Faye, you're always first.
I know, but I was thirsty.
That's not true. One time Sugar was first.
Yeah, but, like, once out of how many episodes
now? I'm on edge ever since. I'm like, am I going to be first
I'm
or
so
not?
sorry. Sugar, say hi.
Hi, it's Sugar, she, her.
Welcome to our Life Day episode. That's what it's called, right?
It is.
Star Wars Life Day.
Star Wars Life
Candle
Day.
Nights.
It is Candle Nights. They were in red robes.
They were in red robes.
The connection to the Adventure Zone was there.
In their weird teleportation to the set of Endor.
We will get to that. Today, we are talking about the holiday special that aired in, hang on, I think it's 78. I'm so right. In 1978. On November 17th, which is a little bit early, I think, for a holiday
Well, it was
special.
a holiday special, not a Christmas special.
Not a Christmas
so that's,
special.
Thanksgiving time.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
At
At least it was after Halloween.
That's
It
true.
was after Halloween.
So I, for one, didn't know that this existed until we watched it for the podcast. How was everyone else's relationship with the holiday special?
We had this on VHS when I was a kid.
Everything clicks together.
We did not watch it with any regularity, but we did have it on VHS. I think my dad burned it, maybe, onto a VHS.
Yeah, it would not be a legal VHS.
No, definitely not.
Did they release them at all, or was it just aired
No.
and then never?
No, the only copies that survived were illegal copies on VHS. My dad did not burn this directly from the TV. He burned it from, like, someone else's illegal copy onto a VHS for our use.
So your quality was really good.
It was great. It was fantastic. Yeah, it was amazing. I think we watched it, like, a grand total of once.
Well, I'm in the middle. I never saw it as a kid. I don't think I even knew that it existed as a kid. I'm not sure my dad knew. I mean, he might have, but, like, he wouldn't have had access to it. I don't know if he actually, watched it on TV when it came out. I don't think he's ever actually seen it, even if he knows it exists. But
You should make him watch it for Christmas. You're like, my Christmas present to
I
you,
know,
Father.
I considered it, having him watch it with me when I saw it for the first time for this, but I was like, I'm going to need to be, like, writing reactions and responses and stuff, and that's a lot easier to do if I'm not watching it with somebody else and they're trying to enjoy it just normally.
Yeah.
Trying to enjoy it is a good way to put this movie.
But I have, like, heard about it, and I've heard that people have generally negative reactions to it and feelings about it, so I was going into it with that already in mind. Think I knew it dealt with Wookiees and Life Day, but I mean, it's a holiday special, so obviously, like, there was some sort of holiday attached to it. But I didn't, like, really know precisely what to expect aside from it's really bad. So
I mean, can I say, I'm really glad it exists. I think it's genuinely so fucking funny that it exists. I'm so happy that Hollywood allowed this to happen, because it's so funny. However, it shouldn't exist. You know
I actually don't think
do
it's
know what
that
you mean.
bad. Like, take away a lot of the details, sure, but, like, the general concept of just, like, a small story about how Chewie's trying to get home for the holidays to his family really isn't, like, the
It's a
worst
good concept.
in the world. Like, its execution is perhaps, like, wanting, but, like, the actual narrative itself is very sweet. That they're worried about him and they keep calling out to the other characters to just kind of figure out where Chewie and Han could be, and the Empire coming in and being difficult. Like, all of that's actually fairly normal. Like, I don't really have any issues with this. Personally, I think that the narrative itself is fine. It's just that the effects are pretty limited. And that there's a few, like, weird things that just kind of pop up in the middle that make it seem very odd. But I think if you removed a lot of the weird interludes, the actual narrative that's left would probably only be about half an hour, for one. But it also would not seem as heinous.
That's fair. It's interspaced with, like, a very normal plot. With just, like, a gallon of weird stuff.
Yeah.
Just randomly. You're like, why is this here,
Yeah.
though? Like, Like, conceptually, the movie's fine, but, like, why did you put this in here? Like, do we need, like, a 5-minute scene of the grandpa watching, like, a weird soft porn video? Like...
Or the chef in blackface. Loved that.
Yeah, so before we...
That was so weird.
Before we dive into that, we'll get there. For sure. Maybe let's run through. We've talked, like, Chewie's trying to get home for Life Day. That's the main plot.
But they're stuck.
Yes.
They haven't quite... They're figuring things out.
They haven't gotten there because the Empire is, like, chasing them.
Something like that.
Well, first, Chewie has a wife and
Yes.
child that Han knows
And
really
father.
well.
And a father.
For some reason.
And a father.
And father. Who all live on Kashyyyk in an Imperial-controlled planet instead of anywhere else. And their house, the inside of their house, specifically, looks like a 70s, like, HD TV show house for some
looks
reason.
like a basic
Even though they're
family
aliens?
sitcom house, yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like how, like, Luke's, like, parents, like, sorry, were Luke's,
and uncle.
yeah, his parents, Owen and Beru, like, they're wearing, like, flannels, essentially. Like,
jeans.
she's wearing a denim
Yeah.
jacket.
Like, he's literally wearing Levi's.
He has, like, a bucket hat on. Like, it's that, like, energy where it's, like, weirdly, like, 70s nuclear family, even though it's aliens in another
She
galaxy.
wears an apron for no good reason.
Shh.
No reason!
Okay, please can we talk about the apron? I'm obsessed with the apron. It is floor length. Like, it goes to her ankles.
And yet it's so deep
When
cut.
she's not wearing the apron, she's not wearing anything. And I love that.
Nothing. And I mean, that's normal because Chewie doesn't wear
Right.
anything either. But like she puts the apron on, it leaves her entire chest exposed. Like the top of the apron is like here.
Like, we can't see you.
And no one can see me. But like it's in the middle of her like chest. You're preparing food. That's what you want to be
Yeah.
covered because if food is gonna splash on you, that's where it's gonna be. And presumably, if she's also worried about shedding hair on her food, that's probably a non-issue for Wookiees. I'm sure they're very used to that. Like that's also where it's gonna be falling from the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very confusing, but I do kind of want her apron.
It's just the length of it is so funny to me.
I should dress up as Mala for Halloween next year. I have like a Wookiee like onesie.
Yes.
I just put an apron over it, and I'll be like, you don't know
You
who
know
Mala
who
is?
Mala is? You're a fake
Pleb.
fan.
Big fan. I will say, I don't think Mala has breasts.
So happy she doesn't
Like,
have boobs. Oh my god.
Major positive on the design.
Yeah.
Itchy's face,
Incredible.
major negative.
Itchy's face is a lot. So
Itchy's-
Chewie's family, his wife is Mala, his son is Itchy. No, his
No.
son is Lumpy. His dad is Itchy.
Mm-hmm.
That's
For reasons. I mean, those aren't their full names. Technically, their names are much longer.
Which
than
I
Oh,
assume got.
those are the names that they are
I
called.
assume
Okay.
that was something that got done after and not for the holiday special.
I think it's in the credits.
Is it in the credits? Because they never say it.
Because I think I was looking at it, because when I was watching it, I was like, is this how it, and we watched the credits afterwards. I think that's how they were credited, but I had to double check.
interesting.
I had this in my notes.
Because I know that they
there.
had fuller names, but I figured that was probably like someone came out and was like, okay, obviously it has to be a longer name that got shortened like Chewie for Chewbacca, but at least Chewie's full name is said in the film that he's in. Like people do call him
Yeah.
Chewbacca every so often, so you know that it's a nickname and not the real name. Whereas Itchy and Lumpy never get that.
Yeah.
But interesting that like the males get these weird long names that all get nicknamed down into convenient English words, but the female Wookiee just gets Mala,
She just gets a nice normal name.
a fairly basic name.
Fairly basic name.
Her name is longer.
Is
too.
her name longer too?
Everybody has long names.
Interesting.
Chewie's wife. Her name is Malatuba.
Okay.
Her son's name is Lumpa Waru. Oh no, you're correct. They are credited as Mala, Itchy, and Lumpy.
So the names would have come after the special.
Yeah, they would have been retroactive.
So yeah, so they genuinely did just name these people Itchy and Lumpy for absolutely no good reason. And
But not the wife. The wife,
the wife
is
gets
named
named a
Mala.
normal name. So there's still like a weirdness here where they gave the two male characters very strange, uncomfortable names, and the wife is just Mala.
Well, She married into the family, you know, like it's the family tradition to name their kids Chewy, Itchy, and Lumpy. And
But like Chewie obviously isn't
parents were
named
normal.
Chewie. Like they introduce him as Chewbacca. Like I think he says, "This is my mate Chewbacca," or Obi-Wan I think might say like, "This is Chewbacca." Like he's introduced with his full name. You only hear the nickname later. Whereas like Itchy and Lumpy are only Itchy and Lumpy, and it's very weird.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be really honest. I don't think that anyone writing this movie was sober. So, I don't know that, like, having a coherent thought that was like, maybe we should have, like, longer names for these people. I don't know. I don't think that was there. I think they were like, what sounds like Chewy, Itchy, Lumpy?
Or they just wanted something funny like that. Like, you know, that.
Yeah. They were like, you know, it'd be hilarious if his son's name was Lumpy. I mean, I will say the actor who plays Lumpy, she's fantastic. She's actually one of the best performances in the whole movie. She's committed to this role. She's doing really good. And, like, some of her scenes, I'm like, I'm genuinely moved by this. You're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah, aside from Itchy's face being what it is, I don't feel like the costumes for, like, Mala and Lumpy are that bad. And even Itchy, aside from his face being very strangely, like, contorted, the rest of the body is fine. Mm-hmm. You know, I think the costumes are up to par as much as you probably could have made them, you know, to match up to Chewie.
Yeah, the costumes feel true to Star Wars in that time period.
Yeah. Like, there are other effects that are not so great, but I do feel like the three Wookiees do look about as good as you would expect a Wookiee to look at this point. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not like those three costumes are visibly worse, you know, by a lot than Chewie.
Yeah. I believed that they were Wookiees. And, you know, the very first scene of them in their house, like, waiting for Chewie to come home, they're, like, looking at the, like, picture of Chewie, very sad that he's not there. It's very domestic. That was cute, and I was into it. And then what I've dubbed the performances started happening.
The performances are so weird.
For our listeners who probably have not watched this and probably won't, the performances that happen throughout this episode. Are you guys cool if I just run through them?
Sure.
Okay. Run through them. Go ahead.
So, interspersed throughout this episode while Chewie is trying to come home, and
his family is waiting for them, which is actually mostly what we're seeing.
Yeah. We're mostly seeing his family waiting for them. They run into some trouble. There's, like, a shopkeeper who's trying to protect them from the Imperials, like, searching their house.
And he's clearly a rebel.
Activity.
Yeah. Because is also very much a rebel.
Yes, and, like, explicitly says when they call Leia and they're like, hey, Chewie's not home. I actually hate that scene because I think that Leia is being very cringe because Mala's on screen and she's like, can you get Chewie or Han? And it seems to be because she doesn't want to wait for 3PO to translate, and that pissed me off. I don't think that's what they intended it to be, but that's how it came across to me.
I thought she was just calling to talk to Chewie.
I don't know.
I figured it was more about, like, I need to discuss rebel things, and so I need the people who are actually involved.
But then when Mala's like, they're not here, she's like, bring your friend to the screen. And she talks to the shopkeeper. And the shopkeeper is like, by the way, I'm a rebel. And I'm like, you can't, like, just say that. But he does.
They're on an encrypted channel. It's fine.
They are on an encrypted channel, and the Imperial guys don't find that, and then a stormtrooper ends up dying. Spoilers for the Star Wars 1978 holiday special. The stormtrooper dies. Anyway, the performances in order. Itchy turns on like a hollow for Lumpy, and it is what I've described as a dance. It feels like it's trying to be a circus.
I think it is supposed to be more of a circus.
I don't love that, but there's juggling, there's gymnastics. One girl does like the uneven bars, and there's some dancing. It lasts for a full 3 minutes, and honest to God, that was the longest I've ever sat and watched something. It felt so long.
My question is, the people who did these gymnastics, do they put this on their resume? Like, were they like, hello, yes, I did the gymnastics for Star Wars Holiday Special. Like, when they were contracted for this, did they tell them that you're going to be really small on a Star Wars holiday screen? You need to do the uneven bars for like 10 minutes in this costume, and we're going to pay you like $5, and then you can put this on your resume forever.
Like, Star Wars was huge at that point. I get the feeling that if you told a random gymnast, like, hey, do you want to come in and just, like, do some performance capture, or whatever, and you'll be like a hologram for a Star Wars, Star Wars piece of media. They might not have even told them it was a holiday special, but like it'll be for like a Star Wars, like supplementary thing that we're going to release. Like I get the feeling a lot of people would have been yes, like very into that.
For sure. But then like that's an insane thing, like a piece of lore for like 30 years. Like, yeah, I was a gymnast on Star Wars one time. Yeah. Like, that's insane.
I don't know that you could put it on your resume because I don't think they would have been credited, but...
That's true. We should see if they're credited and then see if anyone wants to come be interviewed by us.
Yeah. I don't think they are because I already looked at the credits and it's very minimal.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to find your animated general, but...
We'll get to him.
Which we will get to later.
Yeah.
All right, so after the circus...
Lumpy has a little hollow circus. Later, Mala watches a cooking show, which is apparently supposed to be a Julia Child's, like, parody. And it is this woman making some stew or something. And it's apart from the hugely problematic part where the actor is in blackface, it could have been good. Like the premise of it and drag. I don't have a problem with the actor being in drag.
It's less problematic, but he is also in drag.
He is also
he isn't
in drag.
Just impersonating a black person, he is impersonating a black
woman. You're right. Yes. This actor, his name, hang on, I found him. The premise of the reason that this, like, cooking show, the point that they get to is that this, like, person what do you call it? Like, the chef, I guess?
Chef. Yeah, she's a chef.
She's a chef. She's, like, walking Mala through, and it's like, you're doing this with one hand and doing this with another, and then she pulls out a third hand, and then a fourth, and Mala can't keep up. And the idea of that is pretty funny.
I did actually chuckle when, like, the fourth hand is funny.
I've just learned on the Wikipedia that the other two hands are Mala's actress. So I kind of love that. The actor who plays this person is named Harvey Korman. And because he is in 3 separate segments, I think that the reason that they put him in drag to give them a generous read is that they just wanted him in as much of it as possible, and so put him in this other thing. But he didn't need to be in blackface. For the sake of
saving money.
Right,
like use the same actor for 3 separate roles.
Yeah,
which is, again, fine, but the blackface is problematic.
Don't do that shit. It's so easy to just not put people in blackface.
It really is.
I have the easiest time with it, actually.
But yeah, I mean, like, the drag to make a Julia Child parody for this, like, random section is not a terrible concept. I do think it went on for a while. I think we could have been half as long, and it would have been 10 times funnier.
And my question is also, like, why Mala is watching a human cooking show?
I will say imperial propaganda.
I mean, that's fair, but she did still turn it on intentionally.
I mean, if it is a Julia Child parody, Julia Child was incredibly popular, and everyone watched Julia Child because she was the one to watch.
But they could have had a Wookiee Julia Child.
Yeah, but it's probably harder to make a Julia Child Wookiee parody and have that come across as clearly.
It's always my issue with Star Wars is never enough aliens.
Yeah.
To be fair, there's plenty of aliens in this thing.
There are a lot of aliens in this thing.
3 of our main characters are alien.
I mean, I guess she had 4 arms, so she is an alien.
An alien of some kind.
That's a good point. You're correct.
She does look pretty human. Right, I did not write down how long Mala's cooking segment was.
It felt long to me, but I have no idea.
I'm sure it was. Because I thought the Hollow Dance was really long, and it was only 3 minutes. I can tell you
it probably at least 3 minutes.
When Itchy has his little, he sits down in a chair and has something cover his eyes, and then the shopkeeper is like, I got you this present. It's just, wow, you're gonna love it. And he just trips out, and there's kaleidoscope things happening, and then there's just, like, a very beautiful woman that's there for no reason. And she calls him adorable, she was a well-known singer, I don't know, was she not?
I think that woman was a well-known singer.
She probably was.
I mean, the implication is that he's giving him porn. Yes. That is the implication. Her name is
Diane Carroll.
Diane Carroll, thank you. Yes.
Yes.
So
her song is great. Like, she does a great job.
Her song is beautiful.
Yes.
It's 6 minutes long. And it's just, like, this, like, itchy grandpa watching this thing, and he rewinds a couple times to hear her say, like, I find you adorable. And I'm like, he's watching porn. And I don't need to watch him watch porn. Like, that's great for Itchy. Did we need to do this? No.
It was weird. It was super weird.
Like,
it was so odd. Also, like, okay, listen, this is not super, like, it's not like a big thing, right? But, like, I didn't really enjoy that the shopkeeper was there to save them in, like, a really, like, I don't know if there's a word for it, but it reminds me of, like, those, like, war movies when they have, like, the white guy come in and, like, save the oppressed family from the oppressors because they can't save themselves.
You're just talking about the white savior trope.
White saviory, I guess, but, like, it's a very specific, like, wartime thing too. Yeah, like, it bothered me that, like, he came in and, like obviously they can't control themselves, so he has to tell them what to do because they don't know what to do with the soldiers in their house. And, like,
interesting.
It was, I really didn't enjoy the way that, like, they needed him to function because for some reason they didn't know what to do with soldiers in their house, even though this should be, like, a thing they're prepared for.
Interesting. That is not the vibe I got from it, because he's just does not seem very competent.
He himself seemed like he was like in the story itself, it was fine. It was more like on a meta level that I found it uncomfortable, if that makes sense.
No, I see where you're coming from. Like, I do think that there is an element of that where it does feel like he's more in control. He's the one helping them calm down and telling them, like, it's going to be fine. Do this, call this. You know, Leia ends up talking to him instead of Mala, like you were mentioning earlier. You know, because Mala's just, like, upset and freaked out about things, you know, and so he comes in as the level head. And I do think that probably does fall into a trope, which is, I mean, Lucas didn't make this, but it falls into this similar concept of, like, Lucas pulling on tropes from old films, you know, especially war films, that have since, you know, been called out as being problematic and difficult. So it would not be shocking that something like that happened again here. He clearly is supposed to just be a friend of the family, and so he's just coming in to be nice. And I do think he is playing the fool up a little bit.
He super is.
So, like, he is competent. He is pretending not to be very often because that makes it safer. Because if everyone thinks he's incompetent, then, you know, he's safer. But when he's with them and the soldiers aren't around, he does come across as more in control and less kind of, like, bumbly.
That's true. Yeah. He shows up in the first place to bring them all gifts.
Yes.
And then the soldiers show up and he tries to take control. Like, he does his best to take control of that situation. And then he comes back at the end for seemingly no reason.
Just to check in again.
Just to check in again and then, like,
just to make sure they're okay.
But he walks in with, like, a duffel bag and then that's not mentioned again.
I assume that he brought a shovel. And
yes, maybe.
Because I was wondering about that.
The matte painting of, like, the outside of their house is so gorgeous. It's so beautiful. I love the vibe of their house. It's from the outside. It's gorgeous. The inside is, like, whatever.
Inside's fine.
Whatever. But, like, the outside, I'm obsessed with that. I want to live there.
We did interrupt the list of performances, though. So
That's
we hit the pornographic bullshit. What's next?
The pornographic bullshit. The next thing is that while the soldiers are searching the house, this shopkeeper guy has one of them sit down in front of Mala's present, which is like a box that is the way this feels bad. But when he brought it in, I was like, that feels like a sewing machine box. That's like about the size.
That's what I thought it was.
But it's not a sewing machine. It's another hollow projection. And I don't understand why we need an entire box for this, but it's a rock band, like, playing a song. That lasts for 5 minutes. Again,
was that the Jefferson Starships? I think that was the Jefferson Starships.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
So, yet another cameo, obviously.
Yes. Fine performance. I was disappointed because the instruments were just normal instruments, and I wanted, like,
because it was Jefferson Starships.
Right. But I wanted to, like, glue shit onto their instruments to make them look like space guitars, and they didn't do that.
I don't think they had the budget for that.
It was confusing as to why Lumpy had a cartridge for his holodeck, and he brought Itchy a cartridge specifically for his, like, weird porn.
Itchy had, like, a chair that he sat in, to like put something over his head.
But he gave him
Yes.
a cartridge thing to plug into it with the thing on it. But for Mala, she needed a whole box for it. So maybe she didn't have her own like hollow computer, and that's what the gift really was, which is like preloaded with this. But that was confusing. I don't know how their technology.
That part I don't think I paid as much attention to.
Maybe it
I just
was,
sort of
like,
let that butt go.
and you were right to do that. Maybe because
Probably you're more peaceful than us.
maybe
Oh,
because
yeah.
the rock band, like, it was more of like a laser show, and so the hollow needed to be like contained in a box to play off of it.
I think you've put 10 times more thought into this than anyone else
It's
did.
generous read. They just needed something else to go to.
Yeah. All right,
that was
what
the
happened
next
after that one? Inoffensive, but also superfluous and too long.
Yeah, it took, and just the way that this guy is like, oh, I'm gonna have this Imperial soldier sit down and watch this to distract him, and that works. He sits there the whole time.
In fairness, I have no issues with the stormtroopers being presented as stupid, but
I mean, that's fair. That's so fair. I do love that when the Imperial officer shows up for the first time, you can tell it's an Imperial officer because the shopkeeper walks in. He's like in his shop, and he's like, oh, an Imperial officer. I'm like, great. Thank you. I didn't know who this was, and now I do. That's a joke. I did know who it was. I know that I don't know Star Wars things, but I did know that, and I was like, this is meant for people who know less than me, and we love to see it.
in fairness, there was only one movie out at the time
Yes.
that this was released. So,
Yes.
like,
that is an
you
important
know.
point, is that this takes place, this was released and canonically takes place after between the first and the fourth and
between
fifth.
episode 4 and 5. Yeah.
Yes, between episode 4 and 5.
So there was only one movie out. So they
Yeah.
probably did feel like maybe they needed to just
I gotta
like,
explain who this
clarify
person is.
this is another Imperial officer. You know, you've only seen so many at this point, and they've all been contained within a very specific space for the most part within that film. But whereas these days, like, almost anybody is going to recognize an Imperial officer when they show up in Star Wars because there's been, you know, decades worth of content
Yeah,
kind of
I heard
giving you that pattern.
they're making another trilogy.
Yeah, I know.
Damn, we all heard that. I don't believe it. They've been announcing new movies for like 5 years now. We haven't seen a single one. We haven't even seen a trailer for one. When they've actually put out a trailer for a fucking movie, then I will believe them when they say they're making a new movie.
We did hear that filming had finished for the Mando and Grogu movie.
I will believe it when they put out a fucking trailer. I won't believe it before that. Do you know how long I've been waiting for my Rogue Squadron movie? Do you know how long it's been?
Well, that was
so
supposed to be a show, and that did feel like it got canceled.
No, it was supposed to be a
thought
movie.
it was supposed to be a show.
Rogue Squadron was going to be a movie directed by Patty Jenkins. There was a little preview clip of it that she made with her like touching a fighter jet, and it was really cool. And it looked awesome, and it never came out. Okay, so the next one is actually the only thing that's canon. The
That's
Boba
not true.
Fett
This is all
cartoon
canon.
is
Continue.
it's on no, but this is the only one that's on
Yes.
Disney Plus. You can watch the cartoon all by itself on Disney Plus. It is the first time that Boba Fett is ever mentioned. In
The
Star Wars
context of the animation is that Lumpy is getting upset while the Imperial officers are in his house. I think they've messed up his room, or they're living
They
in
fucking destroy his room. They
Yeah.
rip
No one
the
else's room,
head
just
off
his
of
room.
his like mammoth toy. I was
Bantha.
livid.
Bantha.
But while they're doing
So
that,
upsetting.
Lumpy is like self-soothing by watching this cartoon of a real event that happened.
I'm not sure if it's supposed to be like rebel propaganda that he has a copy of, or if it's like a historical accurate. Like, I don't know. Did Leia draw this for him? Did C-3PO generate it for Lumpy
And
specifically?
the fact that they put it on while the Imperials are there, he clearly isn't supposed to be watching it because he switches it over pretty fast when
Yes.
the Imperial comes to check out what he's doing
Yeah.
as well. So, like, this was, like, I get that they're trying to calm him down, but also of all the things you could have turned on for him in this
No,
moment.
Lumpy turns it on for himself.
That's true. Lumpy picks it, but
Lumpy
I
picks
feel
it
like
out,
they could
yeah.
have controlled that situation a little better just to make sure he wasn't turning on incriminating material.
No, they're like, we're searching the house
Literally
for rebel
rebel
activity,
propaganda.
and Lumpy's like,
And Lumpy's like, let me
watch.
watch some rebel propaganda.
It's so I will say the animation style on the cartoon. If the whole thing was just the cartoon, it would be like actually genuinely good. Like, because the cartoon is
cartoon's
fun.
fun.
Like, it's cool. And I really like the like inspiration you can see in it for the 03 Clone
Yeah.
Wars show, which is really fun. I like the art style like crossover. I will say, why did they do Han like that? Why does Han look like that?
Why aren't his eyes open?
Yeah.
He looks like if someone drew Beavis and Butthead, but it was Han. And I don't know why.
I know, I put the note down. I was like, Han got done as dirty in this as Anakin did in the O3.
But worse! Somehow worse!
At least one of them is recognizably that character to some degree, but I'm just like, who hated Han this much?
Yeah.
Like, no one
Clearly
looks
the same
good.
person who did Han did Anakin, like... Oh my god. They were like, no, we cannot have him look as pretty he does in real life. This man needs to be the ugliest thing we have ever drawn.
It's like nothing similar. To be fair, that's almost true about Anakin too, but at least Anakin has generally normal proportions.
Yeah.
Like,
Kind of, yeah, like... It's so weird. He looks like if a shovel had a face.
Yeah. It's bad. But the rest of the cartoon is fine.
It is fun. I do like the rest of it. I like Boba Fett's design. I like the cool, like, horse animal creature thing they can ride. I don't know
Swamp
what it is.
dinosaur, I think,
His
is a
swamp
good way
dinosaur.
Yeah.
That was pretty sick. I enjoyed R2-D2 immediately, like, catching him out.
Yeah, I enjoyed
Like, that was
that
fun.
at the end. So the cartoon seems very high stakes, but then when they catch Boba Fett as working with Vader, he just, like, leaves.
he just like fucks off.
He just leaves.
He just leaves.
But the way
He's
that
just
they
like, "Bye."
do it is so funny because Luke is immediately so trusting of this man and is like, I don't like the Empire, like, blah, blah, blah. And then Boba Fett gets, like, an antidote for some illness that the MacGuffin that Wookiee and Han were getting gave them. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's not talked about ever again. But Luke is like, you're such a faithful and loyal friend. And R2's like, no, the fuck he isn't. And C-3PO has to, like, translate it. And that's how they catch him. Because they're like, no, we intercepted a broadcast between him and Vader. The cartoon is fun. I think if you're going to watch part of this movie, it should be the cartoon.
I do think that the story concept for the live action
Yes.
portion is still better than the story concept in the animated portion, because the animated portion is just kind of a random
Yes.
adventure I mean, it goes nowhere. It's just kind of a whatever, whereas the concept, I think, that is in the live action portion for the narrative that is actually happening is more interesting. There are higher stakes. Like, I was actually feeling stuff, like when they start destroying Lumpy's room, you can feel the genuine fear that they are having, that their lives could be in danger right now, and all of that. So I think that there is something more meaningful to that story than anything in the animated
Yes.
portion. But because the animated portion is short, there's nowhere for it to go that is like unexplainably weird or offensive.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of gets to sit there as a 9-minute little whatever adventure.
Is the cartoon, is that the first time that Mark Hamill did voice acting?
Likely. I mean, he was a baby when he got brought into Star Wars, and that was the year before, so I would assume so.
I wonder if that's what, like, opened him up to, like, doing that after Star
I
Wars
hope
instead
so.
of, like, doing other stuff.
I don't know. He might have had
It's his first
interviews
introduction.
about, doing voice actor work. He mostly does
Oh,
villains,
we should talk about Luke's makeup. We can get to that. Go ahead. Never mind.
So what's our next one? Once the animation
Portion finishes, Lumpy goes back up to his room that has been fucking destroyed and starts to put together this, like, mini transmitter that the shopkeeper gave him and watches an instructional video of how to put it together. And the video is done by, like, the walkthrough is done by the same actor who did Julia Child's parody. So this is his second skit. He plays an android that is a little bit faulty, and so he keeps making very random movements with his body, and he keeps, like, buffering. And I think that is supposed to be funny.
It is a very, like, physical humor kind of thing, where, like, it's supposed to be, like, kind of like a, like, it's kind of like he's showing off how he can move his body like a robot. That's essentially what is happening. Is he's like, look at all of the cool things I can do with my body that make it look mechanical.
I can see that. Okay. I concede.
This is like a whole segment devoted to this man's weird talent of moving like
I think
a
I'm
robot.
realizing that this entire thing is basically a Star Wars skit
Yes.
show disguised as, you
Yeah.
know,
A holiday
this
special.
this narrative about Chewie coming
Yeah.
home. for
I
the
could see that.
holidays, but it probably would have been better had it been a skit show of unrelated skits. Because like the reason they're weird isn't, I mean, some of it is the content itself, but other parts of it is that like it just really pulls you away from the story you're supposed to be getting, and it does not tend to fit in context, and they have to come up with really convoluted explanations as to why you're getting the weird skit.
It feels like they had a pitch show and they were all really high and they said, let's just do everything you guys pitched. And that's what they did.
Yeah, like they just needed
That's
random
what it
stuff
feels
to
like.
fill out
Yeah.
the time. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but also like I would rather take out all the performances and just watch like the random, not the random, but like the actual storyline happening, and I don't care about the rest.
Yeah.
Also, the more interesting story is Han and Chewie escaping the Empire to get there, and we get none of this.
I will say the what is it? There's a word for it. Like the immersive experience of watching what the people are watching is actually an interesting concept. I don't think it's very well executed at all. But like the idea of like, you know, when they do like tie-in things for like movies, like for the Daisy Jones and the Six show, like they made the actual album that they're singing, or like they made an actual like castle, they made actual books that like Richard Castle had supposedly written. Like I do think the idea of like having immersive media for what you're watching is interesting. But it's also weird and convoluted that it's odd.
I mean, like, it has to work in the narrative. Like, the reason those things are fun is because they did already work in your narrative, right? That Richard Castle is writing these books, and that, or whatever, the Interview with the Vampire one, it has this book that he's writing. Like, that already fits into the narrative, so you get to just have this fun bonus, whereas, like, in the holiday special, your performances kind of are your narrative half the time, and they don't fit within the context of what you are seeing. You know, like, all of a sudden you just get this random pornography, and it's like, but why?
I mean, I will say that this gives us like a better view of like what a normal, like, sorry, not normal, but like what the world itself is, like outside of the war, than we get in like really anything else. Because like we're getting like a cooking show, we're getting performances, we're getting an idea of like what art looks like, what propaganda is looking like where like what their TV shows for kids look like, what toys the kids are playing with. Like there's a lot of like it's because it's not, they're not doing this on purpose. They're not doing this to build out the world, but like we're getting a lot of like unintentional world building of what the actual world of Star Wars looks like for everybody else is not in the middle of fighting a war or in the middle of a war zone.
Which is true, and I think if they had put more effort into it being a world-building element, it likely would have felt better. But A, they did not have the budget for that kind of thing, and likely didn't have the time. This came out the next year. Like, you know, I can't imagine they had a lot of time to write whatever this is. From the time someone came up with the idea to the time it had to start being filmed, you know, and it just wasn't the point of it. But I think, you're not wrong that you do get some elements of what life looks like for regular people in Star Wars, but that none of it makes sense. You know, like you were saying, like, why isn't Mala watching a Wookiee cooking show woman? Why is she watching this random four-armed lady who seems vaguely humanoid?
The Tatooine broadcast being like Imperial propaganda for some reason to show how like terrible life is on Tatooine for some reason. This whole scene of like showing like what the bar actually is like on Tatooine is actually fantastic. I actually really enjoyed that. It was cool. However, the scene, like the idea of the Imperial people filming this and then broadcasting it to the entire galaxy is so fucking weird.
It also doesn't look that bad if the point is to show how bad life is on Tatooine. Like, they're just all these happy people at the bar, and she just lets them stay and then sings them out. Like, I'm sorry, but it's not that bad.
And also, like, Bea Arthur is there. I'm sorry, I would go to
Arthur
Tatooine if Bea Arthur was there.
I think my problem with all of the performances is not, like, it's just how many there are, and how quickly they happen one after the other. Like, if they were...
There's more of them than there is story.
There are more side quests than there are the main story, and that's fine if it hadn't been set up to be like, this is the story that we're following, and then we, like, don't follow that at all. Like, but I want to see what Han and Chewie are up to, and then you don't see that.
Right, and every time we come back to, like, his family, they're doing the same thing most of the time. You know, they're just kind of like, where is Chewie? Let's call Luke. He doesn't know. Let's call Leia. She doesn't know. You know, and so it's just like, you know, we're getting this, it's a lot of very, very repetitious. There's a lot of repetition happening in even the narrative that is there. And like you said, I wanted to keep going back to Han and Chewie, and I'm like, that's where the stakes are.
It's like, how do you know that Chewie's gonna get home?
And then all of a sudden they're just like, we made it, but
the Empire's like, we're gonna put a blockade around Kashyyyk, which I think they call Kashyyyk at one point, which is fine. The shopkeeper also says Han instead of Han, which is very funny.
To be fair, that's in the films.
It's so funny to me that the films do that
the film
multiple times.
The films
because
do that
doesn't
too.
Lando call him
And they call Leia Leah.
Han?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does call him Han.
Han.
It's just
Han!
Yeah.
Because they used to be married.
of course.
They're divorced.
Anyway, we see a Tatooine broadcast. Like, very quickly after Lumpy puts together his mini transmitter. It's a really
long broadcast, too. It's like
Yeah.
7-8 minutes of Bea Arthur trying to kick these people out of her bar because there's a new Imperial curfew.
There
Like,
is this,
so long.
this is the third instance of the same actor showing up, and he plays a, like, nice guy who, like, comes to the bar and says, you changed my life because you said, come back soon, I'll be waiting. And then he sits there for long enough that he realizes that she says that to every customer because she's a bartender. Of course she does. And he actually takes it, like, fairly well.
Yeah, he just leaves and he doesn't come back.
Kind of
so proud of him.
leaves, but it is very creepy in the beginning, and I was like, she's handling this very well. Good for her. And then no one leaves the bar when the Empire's like, we're imposing a curfew, and she gets everyone to sing with her in a conga line and leads them out of the bar, and they leave. And honestly, that
Kind of
slaps.
iconic.
It doesn't make sense in context at all. The scene's pretty fun. And she's
And
beautiful.
she's hot.
So, who are we? Who are we to say that that
we?
was wrong? Just a couple of goats who have decided that it's our place to say that things are wrong. The last performance is at the very end when Chewie is safe and sound and Life Day is happening, and we can get into how the fuck that's happening, but Carrie Fisher sings a song about how important Life Day is to the tune of the Star Wars theme, which is kind of fun. It is actually Carrie Fisher singing, and she is, like, hugging Chewie the whole time, which I loved.
No. Hold on. She is not hugging. She is so high. She's about to fall over. And Peter Mayhew is holding her up. She was not holding her. She would be sitting on the ground. She is so incredibly off her rocker. It's so funny. I would be concerned for her health. I didn't know that she got help after this. Thank goodness, because oh my god, is she so high.
Also, she's no longer alive.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, like, in terms of her life, she did get help, like, pretty shortly after this, and got
Yes,
better.
but I'm just saying, like, you don't have to be concerned for her health anymore. She doesn't have health to be
Sugar!
concerned for.
Oh my god!
Ow!
Like, just saying, we don't.
That's
so
fair!
Ah!
I'm not exactly worried about Carrie's health at this point.
I could be.
Anyway,
Oh,
She's fine.
I was impressed
sorry,
with Carrie's
it got a little
performance.
dark, I guess.
I didn't know she could sing.
She's great. Well, her mom is Debbie Ryan.
Reynolds.
Okay, that
Debbie
doesn't
Reynolds.
mean that she
Debbie
could
Reynolds.
sing.
Yeah, but just because your mom can sing doesn't mean you can sing. But she doesn't sing in, like, anything else that I knew about, so I was still surprised to hear her sing, because that, you know, even just because your mom can sing doesn't mean you actually got singing lessons, or that you pursued, you know, getting any good at it. She has, like, what sounds like a fairly basic, raw talent. Like, there's no real...
It's not the best performance
you know,
I've ever
trained
seen.
skill happening here. Like, but it is passable, which actually works in the sense of the character that, like, Leia probably also is not a trained classical singer. She's got bigger problems, but that she is singing this song in this context.
Oh, she used to sing with her mom sometimes. Like, they would perform together when they were a little bit
Which,
older.
yeah, also makes sense.
That's very cute.
But yeah, so, like, I do think that the overall concept of the story is fine. I think that there are stakes there that are interesting. It, you know, fleshes out Chewie as a character to some degree by giving him this life and this culture that we now get to know about. You know, and he's a character who doesn't get a lot of fleshing out in the films because he's mostly just there as comic relief. So that's not a bad thing to, like, let Chewie be the focus of this story. But it also is basically just a skit show with, like, the veneer of a storyline kind of happening over the top. It's odd. It's weird. I don't think I found it, like, the worst thing I have possibly ever seen in my life. But, you know, I can understand why people who went in possibly expecting A New Hope with Christmas
Yeah.
were disappointed. you know.
Okay, so Mark Hamill didn't want to be in this. He read the script and he was like, absolutely the fuck not, I'm not doing this. And George Lucas told him that he contractually had to. He told him he had to do the movie, and he was like, okay, I guess I will. And this was so soon after his accident that the reason his face looks like that in the movie is because they caked on the makeup to hide how bad his injuries to his face were, because he still had like
That
pretty
explains a
significant
lot.
scarring on his face. Like a lot. So they like were caking on the makeup, like pancake makeup, so that he
And
looked
by in the movie, you mean
more
in
normal.
the holiday special, or do you mean in Empire Strikes Back?
Yes, in the holiday special, it's like so cool. Like pretty, the filming was pretty immediately after it, so he still had like barely healed stuff on his face. Like where in like Empire Strikes Back, it's kind of healed over scarred wise, but in this one, like he looks like a Barbie because his face
what I
is
will
busted.
give Mark Hamill is that he does act. He does try. He puts some effort in.
Yeah,
He puts some
puts
effort in. He's concerned for Okay, this is actually the only beef I have with Luke is when he's like, Mala, give me a smile. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Give me a smile.
I know, it's
What
like,
do you mean?
A, this is sexist. B, physically, can
She like grimaces at him
Can
and shows
she
her
even
teeth,
smile?
and he's like, "Yay!" I do love, like, the main scene that he's in is just she calls him to be like, "Hey, I can't like Han and Chewie aren't here. Do you know where they are?" And he's fixing an engine with R2. And R2 keeps beeping at him while he's talking to Mala on, like, the screen. And he's like, R2, I'm busy. And then gets mad at R2 because the engine is, like, smoking. And is like, you're supposed to keep an eye on it. And I was like, Luke! He's trying to tell you it's going wrong and you're not listening. And then you're getting mad at him. And that, like, upset me, clearly. You could tell by how high-pitched my voice went. But it was funny. I did laugh multiple times.
It was
Yes.
funny. Yeah. Luke is clearly very stressed.
Yeah.
He's very stressed.
All right. We have hit about an
We
hour,
should hit
so do you want to
cultural
hit some cultural impacts of the...
Some cultural impact.
So you put down, or I think you asked for Boba Fett, so it is on here. But I added a few past reactions, so I figure we can touch on that just because you've already talked about Mark. He was not the only one who seemed sort of reluctant to do it. All of them that I heard speaking about it were sort of reluctant. But they were all told that it was a favor that Lucas was doing for the merchandising people, so it was a requirement that they all had to come in and kind of just do this. Lucas himself and Lucasfilm also hated it afterwards, which is why all the tapes have been removed from circulation. It isn't even on Disney Plus, as Faye mentioned, aside from the little animated portion. And the actors all kind of laugh about it now and make jokes about how it doesn't exist or they're not supposed to talk about it and things like that. But nobody has anything particularly good to say. They all seem to have negative impressions of both the experience and the end result. But as Nat did mention, Lucas himself apparently did maintain in interviews afterwards the entire thing was considered canon to him. Not just the animated.
It's very funny.
Yeah, not just the animated portion, but all of it.
The whole thing.
Which, like, obviously several of these things have gone on to be in actual canon, like Boba Fett himself, obviously, was intentionally put in there because they were already working on making him for Empire Strikes Back at the time. And Kashyyyk has shown up in, like, Revenge of the Sith. It is shown briefly that we see Kashyyyk. So some of the things that were in there have since made their way into, like, much higher canon. There's apparently Kashyyyk and Chewie's family were actually supposed to show up in Clone Wars. The show got canceled before that happened, but reportedly they were supposed to be in there with references made to the holiday special and its events.
Lucasfilm maintained that it was canon. After they were acquired by Disney, they changed the canon.
It's not considered canon to Disney canon.
To Disney canon, although J.J. Abrams did say that it's canonical in 2015. But Disney, The comment on the very legal copy of it that I watched on YouTube was like, the reason that Disney isn't taking this down for copyright is because they don't want to claim it. So I think Disney is less happy with, like, less willing to claim it than Lucasfilm was, which makes perfect sense.
But, like, I mean, they aren't entirely unwilling, because there apparently is a character in The Mandalorian's pilot episode who mentions Life Day
is canon.
So Life Day is canon to Disney's canon. They aren't, like, throwing all of it out. Kashyyyk has shown up on the Cal Kestis video games. I think it's...
Kashyyyk is also in the prequels.
Kashyyyk is in the prequels.
Kashyyyk is in the
Oh, you mean modern?
I was talking specifically about Disney canon, that there are things Disney is claiming that were originated.
I was like, what do you mean? That's not the only mention of Kashyyyk. We literally see Kashyyyk. No, that makes perfect sense.
No, I did mention that we saw Kashyyyk in Revenge of the Sith as well. But I think it did show up in one of the Cal Kestis games as well, that we go to Kashyyyk. So, like, Disney isn't throwing it out entirely. They are keeping pieces of it. But yeah, so it's, you know, it's not completely thrown out with the bathwater, but it's not something that anybody seems to really want to like.
I think they should make an entire movie about Lumpy as like a grown man now, and he should take over Baby Grogu's Jedi training. I don't have any basis for this. I just think it'll be funny.
Apparently one of the there's like an encyclopedia book or something that was probably pre-Disney canon that claimed that Itchy is one of the gunners in those fighter pilots that we see in Revenge of the Sith on Kashyyyk.
Oh,
that he's supposed to be one of them.
Yeah. We can just say that. No one will stop us.
I mean, that's exactly what the encyclopedias do, right? Like, they just kind of put shit down.
Yeah.
So that was clearly not intended, but, like, the encyclopedia claims it to be true. And there's a reference book later that claims that while Luke and Obi-Wan and Chewie and Han are speaking in the cantina, that B. Arthur's character is apparently just off-screen in another room negotiating a pay raise.
Okay.
So she's not even just working on a random bar on Tatooine, at least not by this point. She is actually working in the cantina on Mos Eisley.
Sure.
Okay.
According to this reference book. So, you know, they have made appearances in other places.
I mean, I will say that, okay, this is a slight, tiny little tangent, but, like, Kashyyyk itself, the design for Kashyyyk, the idea of having, like, these beautiful, like, I don't know.
Like tree houses?
Like, ancient's the wrong word, but, like, medieval tree houses vibe, like, having everything look like that, and then having, like, a really modern home inside of it is actually, like, a really cool idea. I don't like the modern pick that the design they went for inside, but I do like the idea of these, like, of a people who dress and look like, from the outside, like a really, like, primitive culture, but they actually have, like, lasers and electric stoves and shit. Like, that is, I like the concept of it, and I think it is a cool design, just for Kashyyyk itself.
And obviously there have been a couple of different, like, pop culture references made to the holiday special over the years. Apparently there was a reference made to it in the show Community. Guardians of the Galaxy's own holiday special apparently was claimed to be inspired by the Star Wars one. In 2020, Lego made their own Star Wars holiday special that is, you know, an official Disney kind of, you know, merchandise. You know, obviously also being a parody. It was Life Day themed, and people do come in dressed in the red robes to Disneyland, to the Galaxy's Edge area, obviously specifically as a reference to the holiday special Life Day thing, which, you know, in fairness, is the easiest possible costume to come in with. So,
when you said Lego made a holiday thing, I thought you meant a Lego set. No, it's a movie.
Yeah.
It's a movie.
Yeah, Lego's made a couple of Star Wars movies. They've made one very recently called Rebuild the Galaxy, I believe was
the
name
I
of
do love the Lego movies, but I was really excited to have, like, a Star Wars, like, holiday special set, and that didn't exist. So now I have to be sad about that.
The Rebuild the Galaxy one gives the implication that the reason the galaxy is different is because someone pulled the building. There's a special building block that the entire universe is based on, and he pulled the building block out, and the whole thing resets into like a different form. And the reason that the Star Wars like Disney canon exists is because someone rebuilt it. So from Legends. That's the implication in the movie. It's really funny.
Do they make Jar Jar a Sith Lord?
Yes. So the movie happens, the guy is like he's like in Disney canon, and he finds the brick and he yanks it out. And now all the good people are evil, so Jar Jar is a Sith Lord, and like Rey is a Sith Lord.
And so is Rose, and they are lesbians, as I have heard.
And so is Rose. It's great. It's delightful. And he also meets like another Jedi who was like guarding the brick before he yanked it out. And this guy is implied to be from Legends Star Wars, and he yanked the brick out in Legends Star Wars and made it into Disney Star Wars, and now this new person has made it into this
the
Star
Lego
Wars
version. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I heard it was just, enjoyable, good fun, so obviously feel free to go watch it if you want. But I mean, the whole thing with everything Lego does is that it does not take itself seriously. They are loving parodies of Star Wars, so they are gently making fun of it.
Yeah. All of the Jedi are like inside one of those Jawa walker things. And it's really funny. They're just like hanging out, refusing to help.
So the last thing we have here to talk about is Boba Fett and the cultural impact that the holiday special had for Boba Fett. But the things that I got off of my little Wikipedia binge yesterday were that this was technically his first ever appearance in any Star Wars media. His first ever appearance in the public ever was actually at a parade a couple of months prior to the release of this holiday special. Obviously the design of his armor at the time would have been based on the design from the holiday special and not necessarily exactly a recreation of what ended up being in Empire Strikes Back yet. But that was the first time anybody had seen him, which is absolutely hilarious because this random dude in armor would have shown up at this parade and everyone would have gone,
Who is that?
You? Who? Like, I see Vader, I see stormtroopers, I see, like, Chewbacca or something, R2-D2 maybe, and man in armor.
I think that the next time that they invent, like, a new character that has, like, iconic armor or something, they should introduce them in, like, random parade. That would be
just
hilarious.
have them show up and everyone's like, ooh.
Yeah.
But so then 2 months later, he would have shown up on this holiday special. So for anybody who watched it, they would have finally figured out who this man was. I'm sure plenty of people had no idea because there was no internet at the time. And so word of this random, strange, armored person in a public parade would not have necessarily been like super common knowledge at the time. So most people's introduction to him would have been through the holiday special, but it was technically not his first ever public. Moved out of my notes. So Boba Fett as a character came from the fact that they came up with this idea for a cool looking new stormtrooper for Empire Strikes Back, made up a cool looking suit of armor, and then promptly realized they could not in fact afford to make a single other suit of armor.
Yeah, they were flat broke, as the kids say.
And so they only ever had one. Which meant which does not work. If it is supposed to be a stormtrooper, there should be at least 5, probably, in order to make it look like a group of them. So they kind of had to reconfigure the concept, and it ended up turning into a bounty hunter that became the character of Boba Fett, as he appears in Empire Strikes Back and obviously in the holiday special. But this is the only reason Boba Fett exists. Presumably, if they had had the money to make more of these suits, there would be no Boba Fett, and it would just be a random variation on a stormtrooper.
And instead, we have the Mandalorian crazy fans.
Right. So obviously his appearance in the holiday special was based on some of this footage that did exist for the costume. But they, I think, came up with the paint. I'm not sure if they came up with a paint design, but they do claim to have come up with some of the scuff marks on it that they claim then went on to inspire his look in Empire Strikes Back. So things like the dent maybe on the helmet and things like that were things that the animation company came up with for his design that did not exist yet. They
wanted to make sure we all knew that he was broke.
Yeah. as Faye kind of mentioned, the animated segment is generally considered the highlight of the entire thing, which obviously would have given a lot of positive reception to Boba Fett himself, since he is sort of the focus of this animated section as the primary antagonist / villain, in a way that some of those other characters in the parts that were widely considered awful have not made any further appearances in anything major.
Which is genuinely kind of a shame, because I genuinely think that Lumpy is really compelling. Like, I wasn't expecting to like Lumpy so much, but like the performance that Lumpy gives, I don't know why I'm so obsessed with this, but I really, really like Lumpy's performance. Like, I really like, he's so passionate, and he's so like, the actor does such a good job of conveying how Lumpy is feeling all of the time without ever having a single line of dialogue. I mean, besides he speaks in like Wookiee, but like he doesn't actually talk in English that we can speak. And I really, really, really like how he does that. And like, he's so brave, and he's so upset when they tear the head off his bantha, and he's so upset. But he puts the head back on the bantha, and he wraps it in a blanket and puts it on the bed, and it's so sweet.
It was very sweet.
And he's so brave. I love him. And he's the one who gets the stormtroopers out of the house, because he makes his receiver, he fixes it, and then he sends a message to the stormtroopers telling them to go back to base. And that's why they leave, and there's only one stormtrooper for him to accidentally murder when he gets back.
Okay, so what happens to the stormtrooper? The stormtrooper gets left behind. And again, I watched this yesterday. The stormtrooper gets left behind and is like, I'm going to go check on this little kid. Sees the kid, like, sees Lumpy sending out this transmission. Like, breaks his transmitter again, and then chases him downstairs and out onto this balcony where we've seen how high up from, like, high in the trees it is, because at the beginning of the special, Lumpy, like, walks along the balcony, like, railing, which is very classic little kid behavior and cemented my love for Lumpy. And then Chewie shows up as the stormtrooper is, like, threatening Lumpy and, like, gets between the two of them, and then Han sneaks in from the back and kicks away his gun, and as the stormtrooper lunges for the gun, he breaks through the fucking railing and falls to his death on the forest floor. And it's great. Honestly really funny.
It's really great.
I think my favorite part of it is that Han is like, "You're safe now, goodbye," and like, there is a corpse at the foot of their treehouse,
but so far away,
so far down,
and then
something will eat it before anyone shows up.
That's fair. The shopkeeper comes back in for no reason and then calls the Empire and is like, yeah, this stormtrooper took all our food and ran away. And they're like, we'll send out a search party.
Well, and I have to assume that, like, he gives this excuse, yes, but, like, they have to have buried the body, otherwise they would just come back and be like, except his body's right here, mate. Like, he clearly didn't run away.
I don't know.
Also, they accept it so easily. How often does this happen?
I don't know.
They're just like, I guess, okay, it's fine. Oh, does this happen every week? What do you mean? Why are you leaving anybody alone if this is a major issue for you?
It's fine. But we get to see Chewie and Lumpy, like, hug. Han, like, lifts him and hugs him and then hands him to Chewie, which is very funny.
It was cute.
And then Han and Chewie get to have a hug. I appreciated all the hugs.
There was a lot of hugs. I really enjoyed the hugs. I have to give it 5 out of 5 for hugs.
He, like, almost kisses Mala, but doesn't.
Yeah.
And they just hug.
I will say the Mala and Chewie reunion is very sweet, because she's clearly, like, still pissed at him for making her so worried.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I'm so sorry, babe. Listen. It's me.
But I'm home and you love me. And she's like, you're right.
It's like, babe, it's Life Day. Come on.
It's Life Day. Let's fight tomorrow. About how I'm never home.
Yeah. But I'm never here for you. And I literally only see you once a year.
Yeah. And then we, like, don't hear about you in canon ever again.
Only because Clone Wars didn't
That's true.
continue.
They almost did.
They would have been in canon in Clone Wars had that show not gotten canceled after the buyout.
So then at the very end, it's Life Day, right? Mm-hmm. Life Day somehow involves all of them teleporting to a forest.
I don't know.
Like, they literally walk through space to a forest where Carrie Fisher is also there. Mm-hmm. Which she was on a different planet before. So she didn't, like, come to Kashyyyk for this.
No.
Like, Carrie Fisher and Luke are also there, even though they were in other places earlier.
And the droids.
And so is Han, even though he left. And the droids. So everybody's there. They all teleported to this place, and they're all celebrating Life Day
They
together.
say something about a tree of life. That's never
Yeah.
addressed again.
I think they're all transporting themselves to the Tree of Life, perhaps.
That's what it
and they're-
seems like.
Yeah, to or inside. It seems like they might be inside a giant
Maybe
tree.
they're all tripping together, and that's the Tree
That
of Life.
checks out.
I don't know. Because they do, many of them seem very high for this movie.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing about the ending is that they all walk into the light. And I was like, so this is 100% very common visual shorthand for everybody dying.
Yeah.
Like, we're very literally having everyone walk into the light. This is 100% everyone dying. And it treated as like this beautiful, happy thing. And I'm like, they're all dead.
But they're not.
Like, I don't know how to tell you that you've just told
Yeah.
me through visual shorthand that they have all died
Yeah.
and gone to heaven.
The Empire glassed the planet, actually, and this is what's happened to them.
This is Wookiee heaven.
Because that
Yeah.
stormtrooper, he was actually Tarkin's boyfriend.
Tarkin's boyfriend should be dead by this point. All right. Final thoughts on the holiday special.
It exists.
For sure. For sure it exists. I'm glad it exists.
We'd like to see Chewie's family in other contexts.
I kind of still don't believe that it does exist. I've watched it and I'm like, well, I don't know if that was real. But apparently it was.
The fact that anyone has any memory of making it does surprise me. They all seem very blacked out.
Yeah. I
God.
did here are the things quickly that I liked. I liked Mala. I think that she was very sweet and I appreciated how concerned she was. I loved Lumpy. I liked Boba Fett's little swamp dinosaur. I liked how bad the writing was because it was funny. That's it. Anyone else?
I liked the concept of the actual narrative that was in there. I thought that it had appropriate stakes and that there are definitely moments that hit. You know, like, I'm always going to be a sucker for, like, father is away and, you know, our parent is away and, you know, family's waiting and then they come home at, like, just the right moment and it's very emotional. You know, I do think I would have preferred a little bit more time with Han and Chewie as they make it home. I think that would have helped it hit a little better for me. That clearly was not the budget they were working with.
They did not have the budget.
You know, they were like, oh, we're going to have to go all the way to the other side of the planet, you know, and walk the rest of the way. It's going to take a while, buddy. And then they're just kind of there at, like, a normal time.
At the perfect time.
So I'm like, okay, that didn't seem like it was really that big of a hardship for anybody. But, you know, the overall concept, I think, was actually really meaningful and a perfectly good story. And I did appreciate that. And I think that was the only thing I appreciated was the concept. I didn't actually love any of the characters. I was kind of, like, neutral on all of them, including Mala and Lumpy. Like, they're fine, but, you know, they're also very much just, like, basic cartoon stock characters. Without a lot of, like, real depth to them.
Well, they don't have time because we got to keep watching all these musical numbers.
Performances.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think the new characters were all pretty basic, but I think the concept was there, and it's too bad that everyone just dismisses it as a fever dream. Because I think there could be something meaningful done with it if anyone chose to explore it.
Yeah.
I liked Mala, and I liked Lumpy. And I liked the design
That's
for
it.
Kashyyyk. Kashyyyk looked cool.
Kashyyyk did look cool.
I'd love to see, like, a rebel Mala in something, anything.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would be, like, just to, like, turn Mala from this weird 50s housewife character who does nothing but cook and be worried.
She should have kicked the
Yeah.
stormtrooper off the ledge. That's what should have happened. She
Yeah.
should have chased that man
That's what
out of her
should've
house, and
happened.
she should have kicked him off the ledge and turned to Chewie and been like, "Where the fuck have you been?"
That actually, let's rewrite history. That's a better ending. I like it.
But yeah, like, I do hope we get to see more of Chewie having a family. I think given the way the sequels went, that's unlikely to happen, given they got completely ignored. But it would be nice to get more of Chewie's family in future.
It would be.
I don't know, though, because then I need them to explain why Chewie doesn't seem to spend time with them.
We only get to see so much time
I know.
of him, so there's plenty of time for him to spend with his family.
Han is like, you guys are like family to me. Happy Life Day, and then leaves. And I'm like, wouldn't you be invited to stay if you were part of the
Not to mention the solo film exists, and we never see a family in that, which I feel like is a pretty good indication we're never getting shit on Chewie's family.
They hate us.
They do.
But now we know that Mala and Lumpy, and I guess Itchy, exist, and we can do whatever we want with
I
that.
like that everyone's willing to just dismiss Itchy. Like, you know what, it's fine. Itchy can go watch his pornography in the sideline.
Listen, that's fine. I love that for him. I have no problem with that. I don't want to be a participant in that experience in any way, shape, or form. That's private for you, Itchy. I don't need to watch you. Anyway, do we have a goat fact?
I do have a goat fact. Goat ear size varies between different goat breeds. Some goats have long, flappy ears, like Nubian or Boer goats, whereas La Mancha goats have very tiny ears.
I love that.
I didn't know that. It's cute. I love goats.
I've never thought about goat ears before. That's beautiful.
So I guess what that means is you want, you know, more ears on your whooppies.
You don't have ears. You're right.
Our intro and outro music is Mos Eisley Cantina by Speedkicks. Angela and I edit, our artwork is by me, and Sugar is our writer and researcher. You can find us on Instagram and Tumblr at Unleash the Goats. Thanks for listening.